The Democratic chair of the House Ways and Means Committee is now issuing a formal request, and I've just got it here in our newsroom moments ago, for 6 years of Donald Trump's tax returns. This is a written request to the IRS commissioner. It's a formal request going to the Treasury Department, and it uses a law that doesn't require the Senate or Republicans or remaining vote. This is something that has been discussed for a long time because it is a power vested in the House, and it appears tonight that the Democrats have decided to pick this fight even as everything else is going on. Breaking news. I'm thrilled that we have a member of leadership, New York Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, who serves on the Judiciary Committee. What does it mean, Congressman, that the Democrats are moving forward with this tonight? Is this the first you're hearing about it, or is this something you guys have been planning to unroll today?
Well, this has been within the bailiwick of Chairman Richie Neal, and so this is something that has long been anticipated. And it's part of our oversight responsibilities. You know, the House is a separate and co-equal branch of government. We don't work for Donald Trump. We work for the American people. And so we have a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check and balance on an out-of-control executive branch. We're going to take those oversight responsibilities seriously. It's been a tradition in this country that every president since Richard Nixon has disclosed his taxes to the American people. There's no reason why Donald Trump shouldn't do the same. He's refused. We are now taking this step to make sure that we have disclosure and transparency.
Did you know this was coming tonight?
I didn't realize that it was coming tonight. I knew it was coming sooner rather than later.
But that's interesting in and of itself for those of us who follow the news, because it speaks to that it's truly breaking news, and that, as you say, Congressman Neal, Chairman Neal, has this authority. We reported on election night the sources in the House saying this was something they wanted to do in a deliberate way. They intended to do it. But as you just said, Congressman, we didn't know when. We just got the letter literally moments ago here after we started our broadcast. I want to read from this. For your analysis, you say this is the oversight power. There are Republicans and other allies of the president who will say, well, tonight you're asking for more than just his personal tax returns, which is what candidates traditionally reveal. Reading from the letter from your colleague, it's demanding 6 years of federal income tax returns for not only Donald J. Trump, but his revocable trust, DJT Holdings, DJT Holdings Management Member LLC, DTM Operations, don't even know what that is, LFB Acquisition Member Corp, LFB Acquisition LLC, Lamington Farm Club, Trump National Golf Club, Bedminster. Walk us through the Democrats' argument here that this law, which, as I mentioned, has always existed, not new to the Trump era, should be justified for you to look as members of Congress at all of that material.
Well, we're going to travel down a two-lane highway on behalf of the American people. In one lane, we're going to continue to deal with kitchen table, pocketbook issues like lowering health care costs, strengthening the Affordable Care Act, and protecting people with pre-existing conditions, particularly given the assault on the Affordable Care Act that's taking place right now coming out of the Trump Justice Department. In the second lane, we have a responsibility to make sure that we deal with waste, fraud, abuse, and the possible culture of corruption that is running rampant within the Trump administration, coming out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue as well. And so all of these related entities could likely deal with Trump's personal tax returns, and could be ways in which he has managed his taxes. Some of this information has been brought to bear based on prior testimony that we've seen this year and in prior years, and we'll see where this leads us.
I'm also curious, before I bring back in the panel on what is clearly a hot story tonight, Congressman, do you believe that Speaker Pelosi is prepared to back up Chairman Neal if the Treasury, as they've indicated they may, if they refuse? The law says very clearly that the chairman has this power for requesting the presidential or citizen tax returns, and they're supposed to go over in a private process. Obviously, if you guys and Speaker Pelosi push forward on this and they say no, are you prepared to go to court and battle this out? Are you prepared to be basically in court over both the Mueller report subpoena, which was issued today, and this today?
Well, that will be a decision that the Speaker will make in consultation with Chairman Neal. But what we want to make sure the president and this administration does is comply with the law. As you indicated, Ari, the law is very clear in this particular instance. We're operating within those constructs, and we hope that the president and the administration will comply. If they don't, that's why the Article 3 federal court system exists.
Mm-hmm. Congressman, stay with me. I'm going to bring back in the whole panel. Let's play what we've just pulled on this breaking news, which was the last statement we've seen. It was under oath to Congress of Treasury Secretary Mnuchin when pressed on this. Let's take a look.
Have you received any instruction or guidance of any kind about how to handle congressional requests for President Trump's tax returns?
Based upon the request, we'll examine it and we will follow the law. We will protect the president as we would protect any individual taxpayer.
Following the law would generally, Jason, mean handing it over. The reference to protection made a lot of people think that Mnuchin was laying down a flag, a marker.
Yeah. Look, the committee has a right to say how many dollars you got. They can ask that question. They can ask that of this president, and they should be able to get the information. What I think is going to be key here is, remember, a lot of us also assume that Mueller already had this information and that it may have actually been in the Mueller report. So this is also indicative of the Democrats thinking holistically, look, if you don't give us this report, we will pull apart every single strand of your life and your administration until we get what we need. It might have been a lot easier if Barr had put this information out to the Democrats 2.5 or 5 days ago, whenever the Mueller report came out. Maybe this request doesn't come through.
Well, you're making the point, and I was just discussing with the congressman, that in a way, these may be linked court battles. You're already going to court to have a big fight over the underlying material in the Mueller report and whether the Congress, as in its constitutional role and ability to look at it. So why not get it all done, even if they're going to be, they would probably be separate pieces of litigation.
Right, and that's a smart idea. And plus, it makes the Trump administration basically have to fight on two fronts, right? You have to, can you claim this as executive privilege? Can you say that this is presidential privilege? Especially when the committee has this right. They have not shown that they are necessarily swift enough to engage in those battles on multiple levels. And at some point, I think somebody in this administration is just going to fold and they're going to say, look, just take this, because I actually think that the Trump administration would be more concerned about this president's taxes becoming public than the Mueller report.
That's interesting when you put it that way. Congressman, I want to read from something you recently wrote on the internet that seems related. You were addressing Donald Trump, and you wrote, billionaire, but no tax returns. Stable genius, but no grades. Exonerated, but no hashtag Mueller report. Party of healthcare, but no plan. The American people are being hustled, you wrote, straight out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Hashtag, all caps, facts. How much of this is about potentially embarrassing the president for not being as wealthy as he claims versus the more serious oversight of inspecting whether he has other debts, liabilities that matter to the governing of the United States?
Well, the most important thing, of course, is to figure out whether there's compromising information that would suggest that the president's interests are not solely related to what's best for the American people, but there are financial dealings that would present a conflict. That's the reason why tax returns have traditionally been disclosed by president after president after president across the ideological spectrum, including Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and Barack Obama. So that fundamentally is what we need to see here. The question, of course, that I was getting at is, what is the president hiding? On issue after issue after issue, he says one thing, and then there's no underlying information to confirm it.
I mean, to put it, you said facts. Isn't it just kind of straightforward? It's the same issue that doubles back to the Mueller report. The breaking news tonight is Democrats, for the first time in your party, are using this new law to demand 6 years of the president's tax returns. That's a big development for folks just turning on their TV coming home from work, at least on the East Coast. But then you get to the more basic point that overlaps tax returns and the Mueller report, Congressman, which is, if you have nothing to hide, why are you hiding?
Well, that's exactly right. We got a 4-page summary from a political appointee of Donald Trump, when there's a 400-page report that the American people deserve to see. And the subpoenas were authorized today because, at minimum, members of Congress who have the highest security clearance on behalf of the people that we serve should be able to see the entirety of the report, in part because we need to figure out not just what happened, but why it happened, and how do we present this type of situation from happening moving forward in the best interest of avoiding another attack on our democracy.
Christina Greer, this would be a significant development tonight at any time with any president. Most modern presidents, as we've noted, have released their individual tax returns.
Or sold their grandfather's peanut farms, just so it didn't look improper.
because of the peanut conflict. Well, look, I'm, you know, this may not be popular to say. Big Peanut does have too much power. Big Peanut, the peanut farming lobby. So you make a bipartisan point there. I want to play for you the extras part, because we can normalize and degrade down, or we can remind ourselves of standards for any politician. I would hold any politician to their remarks. We do it on this show. Here is, over time, Donald Trump proclaiming that it would never come to this, that the House would never have to use this law, because he was eventually going to release the returns.
Maybe I'm going to do the tax returns when Obama does his birth certificate.
If I decide to run for office, I'll produce my tax returns, absolutely.
What is your tax rate?
It's none of your business. You'll see it when I release.
You don't release your returns until the audit's complete. When the audit's complete, I'll do it. I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes. When she releases her 33,000 emails, I mean, I became president. No, I don't think they care at all.
So we know that Donald Trump has no plans on releasing his tax returns. We know that he's definitely afraid of whatever's in there. We have to also break the American people into a few groups. There's the base. They don't care what's in the tax returns. They don't care if he's been stealing from the American public. They don't care that he's asking us for hundreds of billions of dollars to build a wall to nowhere. Then there's some people who are in the middle of the road who are curious to just see how this does connect to the Mueller report. I think what Congressman Jeffries laid out was really important, though. The Democrats have to do two things at once. On the one hand, they do have to fight this, and they've already thrown down the gauntlet saying, yes, we are going to actually go the legal route through the House, which we can, to demand these tax returns, because there's something else that's going there that's making the American people, half of the American people, feel somewhat uncomfortable. On the other hand, Democrats are going to town halls, they're talking to their constituents, and they do recognize that people care about health care. Right, they care about the economy. They care about their jobs, whether or not they're going to be able to pay for their children's college fees. So the two lanes that he talked about are very specific, and I think the Democrats have to thread a very fine needle, because the news every evening, the breaking news, cannot be just about Mueller and just about tax returns.
And just about oversight, Trump. Even though they've only been in office here for 3 months with this power.
Exactly. I mean, they just celebrated their first 100 days. I have no doubt that Nancy Pelosi has a lot planned for the next 100 days and the next term. However, they need to make sure that breaking news every night on the beat is that the Democrats have fought legislatively for the American people on pocketbook issues as well.
Well, and this is a week, it's interesting for you to say that this is a week where health care was also up front and center, and the president was in retreat on that. Neil at this Ways and Means Committee has been under pressure to do a number of things. I've spoken with his team. They're big on, they want to do infrastructure. They want to do jobs. As you say, it's about pocketbook issues, or as a former president used to say, peanut book issues. All about them peanuts.
Poor Jimmy Carter. You know, his grandfather worked so hard for that peanut.
I'm not criticizing Jimmy Carter.
I mean, but see, I think this is going back to a larger conversation about morals, decency, and respect, right? We had a president who didn't want to seem improper. Even Nixon didn't want to seem improper. So we had presidents who backed away from personal businesses. We now have a president who's actually making more money. Every time dignitaries and Secret Service members and press have to stay at Mar-a-Lago across, you know, either in Florida or New Jersey or in New York or Washington, D.C., the president and his family are pocketing that money. And so this is a larger conversation, I think, with the tax returns and also with the Mueller report.
Let me bring in, as you mentioned, Mueller report, Natasha, who has been standing by. And my thanks to Hakeem Jeffries, a congressman from New York, who had to depart to go back to work, obviously a busy night on the Hill. Natasha, take a listen to one of Congressman Jeffries' colleagues, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, cross-examining Michael Cohen on a related issue.
Mr. Cohen, I want to ask you about your assertion that the president may have improperly devalued his assets to avoid paying taxes.
It's identical to what he did at Trump National Golf Club at Briarcliff Manor.
Do you think we need to review his financial statements and his tax returns in order to compare them?
Yes.
Natasha, it was the Mueller probe that started the shift in Michael Cohen's allegiance to Donald Trump, and ultimately the furnishing of evidence, financial and otherwise, the checks, etc. We don't have any belief that he had the tax returns in his role as counsel at Trump org. He certainly didn't fork those over in public. But walk us through how that case, which relates to other potential financial matters in New York and has been handed off and is open as far as we know in New York, relates to all of this, or what the Democrats are doing tonight.
Yeah, look, if we are to believe Michael Cohen, then the real shift came when he saw Trump standing up there in Helsinki with Vladimir Putin, siding with Putin over his own intelligence agencies. And it was at that moment that Cohen, again, if we are to believe him, thought, hey, where do the president's allegiances lie here? Do they lie to the highest bidder, or do they lie with the interests of the American people? And I think that is really at the heart of questions about where his money comes from, and why Mueller, I think we can't be so sure that he was able to look into these questions in depth, because he was still somewhat constricted in what he could investigate, and whether or not he went in depth into Trump's financial history, into his businesses, really is unclear, again, because we haven't seen the report. But the investigation being done by the Southern District of New York into the Trump Organization is an area, according to reporting, that Trump is very concerned about. It is something that he's always been more concerned about, especially with Michael Cohen's cooperation, than the Mueller investigation. We'll see whether or not that's justified, but for now, it remains an open question.
And the open question, as you so expertly detail it, Natasha, also includes whether the obstruction section of this still secret Mueller report involves attempts to interfere with other investigations or matters in New York, which have been reported on in the press, but we don't know what Mueller found about that. Don McGahn, who was subpoenaed today by Chairman Nadler, was in the driver's seat on a lot of Donald Trump's requests, some of them not acted on because they were deemed potentially illegal or unconstitutional or impeachable, is someone who can speak now to the Congress, potentially under subpoena, as well as whatever he gave Mueller. And I say all that in addition to the news tonight for folks joining us, where the Democrats are writing one of the most boring statements with the most significant repercussions potentially in Trump's Washington. I write to request under the authority in the IRS Code 6013F each of the tax years from 2013 to 2018 and on to all of these tax returns. Again, a law that is different than most of the powers in Washington because it vests this authority for tax returns in only the chairman, who happens to be a Democrat now on the House side, doesn't require the Senate, doesn't require a law, can't formally be vetoed. That breaking news tonight. I'd love to ask Jason and Christina to stick around for more breaking news coverage. Natasha, thank you. I know you got to go back to work. We have a lot more in this show, including the breaking news that